Tonight, I want to tell you a story about today. And tonight, it weighs heavy on my heart and mind what happened today. But I want to share it. Anyway, today was a really beautiful day. My daughter graduated from college, and this morning, before we went to the graduation, we went to a grocery store to buy flowers. And I was with another friend. We went in. As we went into this particular grocery store, there's a patio table with an umbrella. And this patio table is for anyone to sit and eat their lunch, or employees of the grocery store, or, sometimes there are homeless people that will sit at that table. Sometimes, not all the time. But today, as we walked into the grocery store, there were a group of men that were homeless sitting at that table. There were two older men and a younger man, and the younger man had his backpack on his back, and he was talking to him pretty animatedly, and he was using, cuss words every other word. And I thought, wow, he's, swearing a lot. Anyway, went into the grocery store, picked out our bouquets, and went to the self-checkout, checked out, and came back out. And on our way out, our backs were towards this table with these homeless men. And all of a sudden, one of the older men said my name. He said my name. And I stopped in my tracks. And I turned around and I looked at this group of homeless men. And I stared right at the man who had said my name. And he kind of changed the subject and I think tried to move on to a different topic. But I stared at them and I said, "How do you know my name?" And finally the younger man said his name. He said, "I'm so-and-so." And I said, "What? You're?" And I walked over so I could look at his face closely. I walked over, I touched his face, I touched his beard. Yeah, he had those same deep blue eyes with those thick eyelashes. And I said, Are you homeless?" And he really didn't give me a straight answer. But in that moment, I knew who. This was a young man who had spent many nights in my home for birthday parties, slumber parties. And I just took his head in my arms and hugged him for a long pause, like a long moment. Because I knew his mom had died, but his dad had still been alive. But maybe his dad has passed away too now. And now he's on the street. And I just held his head in my arms and hugged him for a long moment. And then I stepped back and I said to those other homeless men, I said, "Do you know that I have known this young man since he was a little boy? And he spent many nights in my home." And then I looked at this young man and I said, "Do you have a cell phone?" Because I wanted to give him my cell phone number. And he said, "No, I used to, but I don't have one anymore." And I said, "Well, you need to come to my house. We need to talk. And you know where I live. You remember where I live." But see, the sad thing about this story is this young man was born a drug baby. And the people that ended up adopting him, the dad, when he would go visit him, I don't know how he was connected to them, but he said every time he went there, this little baby was being abused. Every time he went, and he got sick and tired of seeing him abused. And one day he just brought him home and he said, "That's it. I'm not gonna allow him to be abused anymore." And he brought this baby home and he adopted this baby and raised him as his own son. And now both of those people are dead, I believe. And now he's on the street. Tonight, I can't help, and all day since this morning, I cannot help think about him and where he is tonight. Because it was a stark contrast to have this experience this morning before this beautiful graduation where you have all these families and parents there supporting their children graduating from college. And then you have some children who aren't that lucky, who have no support, and at such a young age on the street. I mean, this was like one of my kids. So I just wanted to share that because I told him he knew where I lived. He didn't have a cell phone, so I don't know how to contact him. I don't know where I would find him. I know I can't take him in because of, certain things that I do know. I know I can't take him in. But I could give him money, or I don't know. I wish I could find someone who could give him a job. Anyway, just such a strange experience today. A jolting experience to have a homeless man say my name. It was just so strange. Anyway, talk to you later.